Hi and welcome back. I'm Caroline Best of Dow Horsemanship. And this video is part of our Everything Horses and More blog series. And this is part 4 of our pre-purchase exam, Buying the Right Horse. This is Lovey. Lovey's going to be one of 5 horses we're going to take a look at today in part 4. And as usual, I'm going to read my outline here just so I don't get off track too much, and then I will get into more detail after I'm done reading this. So again, we're going to look at 5 different horses today, and the reasoning behind that is to educate your eye, train your eye, as I like to call it, to what you're looking at when you are viewing a horse. And I like to look at it when I'm going to look at a horse that I want to purchase, a sale horse, a potential horse. I like to look at it like an interview process as well as a test. So you'll hear me use those 2 words often in this video. So you're interviewing to see if it's a good connection, good chemistry with the horse, putting it through a litany of tests like I discussed in part 1. I discuss about the emotional agility or the mental agility test. So again, we're interviewing horses and we're testing them, and that's what's really important. I know a lot of people use the word, I'm going to go try this horse out. I'd like to take it a little more seriously than that. I want to interview them for this position, and I want to test them for this position. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, what I mean by that, and how to break it down and make it easier for you. So in this video with the 5 horses, we are going to be looking at conformational differences and how the conformational differences with each of the 5 horses does or doesn't affect their movement. So we're really looking at how does this horse move, and are they moving well or correctly. A lot of times, we fall, it's such an emotional decision purchasing a horse, and we're not as realistic or grounded or objective as we should be. Oftentimes we're like, oh my gosh, this poor horse needs somebody to save it. I know, I've been there. I have so many of my personal horses are rescue horses, and I certainly have worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rescue horses over my career. So I completely understand what it's like to want to help and save a horse. And then of course we get caught up in how they look, how pretty they are, how flashy they are, and we forget to pay attention to some of the more critical and serious and realistic aspects, like how does the horse move, and we're going to take a look at that. Again, I want to train your eye and just educate you a little bit more on what you're looking at, and the different horses that we'll be looking at will all move differently. And it's not just because of the breed of horse. It has to do with, and I'm going to categorize the 5 horses. They're going to fall into 3 categories. And those categories are going to be basically a great pre-purchase exam, which Lovey and Sundance are going to fall into. And that means that they will pass with flying colors just with the visual and the visual assessment. This is before you would hire a vet to come and do their end of the pre-purchase exam. So again, if we're going to be purchasing a horse that's within our price range or more than we expected to pay, depending on what you want to do with that horse, I would definitely call a vet in to give you a pre-purchase exam. So what I'm trying to do is train your eye to look at the way the horse moves correctly or not so well, because that in and of itself should prevent you from hiring a vet. I have never had a vet come and give me personally a pre-purchase exam on any of the horses that I've adopted or rescued or bought, and that's because I know what I'm looking for, and they go through the litany of tests that I keep talking about. However, I'm also not showing or competing or putting a lot of rigorous strain daily on any of the horses. Even when they go into a training program with me, I'm not breaking them down. I'm really careful. They all are built and developed very slowly and through a system, so to speak, which allows me, if any of them showed signs of lameness, which they never have, I wouldn't be pushing them so hard that I would make them more lame, if that makes sense. So again, we have 4 parts to this pre-purchase video series, so to speak, and I'm trying to train you guys to know what you're buying, both mentally, emotionally, and physically, and also prevent you from hiring a vet. But again, if you're going to be purchasing a $20,000+ horse and you're going to be showing that horse, I would absolutely get an exam and get some x-rays done just to make sure that the horse doesn't have any, more serious issues, especially when it comes to lameness. So getting back to the 3 areas or categories that I'm going to be breaking down with these 5 horses is, 1, what's a really awesome, great pre-purchase exam? What does that classify? We're going to show that with Lovey and Sundance. What's a good pre-purchase exam, and what's a below average or poor pre-purchase exam? So we're going to talk about all of the classifications or qualities of that, and we're going to look at the different horses that show up within those different categories. So let's jump back to when I'm going or thinking about buying a new horse. I'm going to write down a pros and cons list of some of the things that I absolutely have to have and why I have to have them. What's the purpose? What do I need this horse for? And what do I want this horse for? And then some of the cons would be, what would I be able to settle? Let's say that this horse had everything I wanted, but the price was too high. And maybe I just can't, there's just no way I can afford that horse no matter what. Then what's the next level of horse that I'm willing to compromise my needs and wants because I can only afford a certain amount. And you have to be really careful, and I know that price has so much to do with it, but you have to be really careful what you're buying. And as I mentioned in the part 3 before, a lot of times there's just so many scam artists out there, you guys. And if you buy a horse below $5,000, usually around the $3,000 or lower mark, you're usually going to get a horse with different types of issues and challenges, whether it's physical issues that you're just not aware of, or it's mental and training issues, behavioral issues. Normally, when horses are priced $5,000 or above, they definitely have a level of education and training in them. That's why people are selling them, or they have a really excellent pedigree, which can be tricky because the horse can be really beautiful and flashy and well-bred, but it might be a lot of horse and really challenging. So you have to weigh all of these things. I'd like to say that across the board, and that's why I was breaking down the price structure in the previous part 3 video, and we're going to talk a little bit about it again in this video series. Price does dictate quality for the most part. I'm going to say about 85 to 90% of the time when you're purchasing a horse, your price is going to dictate the quality. Now, there are scam artists out there. Horses do get drugged. You might have a really amazing, talented horse, but only for an advanced rider. And, people have to be really honest about that. And I think for the most part they are. They do say this is for a novice or beginner or an intermediate rider, or this horse is really a lot to handle, but it can definitely do the show circuit, whatever that circuit is or discipline. So when we're going down our checklist and we're getting ready to buy a horse, I always make a pros and cons list. Again, what are you willing to compromise if you have a certain price and you really want this horse, but you just can't afford it? And then the third thing would be, do you know what you're looking for? Have you spent enough time educating yourself, which is what I'm hoping this series of pre-purchase exam videos offers you, is the opportunity to really step back, be more objective, study horses' movement, study their hooves a little bit more, study their top lines, where's their mindset. You know, obviously look at Lovey, how calm and relaxed and focused she is right now. She does have bugaboos with paper and the noise of paper and white things and white bags. That's why this round pen has the bags, so that she can just become a lot more familiar and comfortable with bags. They're not in here to specifically desensitize her. It's just they're just part of her environment. So Lovey is also not an off-the-track thoroughbred. She didn't race, but she did have a year of training before I rescued her. So she was pretty messed up. So you have to think about that. You know, where are you getting these horses? Unfortunately for me, all 3 of the OTTBs that I rescued from the racetrack came with either mental, emotional, or physical problems. And Lovey didn't have any physical, but she sure was messed up mentally and basically absolutely untrainable. So I have heard great stories from people getting 3-year-old horses off the track that haven't had any physical lameness issues, and they weren't that difficult to retrain either. But I'm just telling you, for all of us that want to save the horses and give them another career or another chance or a wonderful life, you really have to know what you're looking at, because I also have a lot of students that do that, and they end up inheriting horrific physical challenges and mental challenges. And it's tough, I know. So that's kind of like, what are you willing to compromise? You know, it's like you have this wonderful horse that has tremendous potential, but it might be difficult to train. But you could only afford maybe for the training, or afford a certain amount of money to put down on this horse and purchase this horse. So make your pros and cons list. It really does help you think about it and get more in touch with what's important. And being objective is excellent. It'll save you guys so much money in the long run, because again, the cheapest part of horse ownership is purchasing the horse. I tell you, horses are expensive. So in part 3, we started to talk about the areas of a horse that we all want to consider. What are we looking at? Like the temperament. What kind of personality does it have? What kind of temperament does it have? Athleticism, the spirit level. What's their body condition? What's their conformation? So their body condition is, do they have a shiny coat, a dull coat? Are they muscled, not muscled? Conformation is how they carry themselves, how they stand. We're going to look a little bit more at that. Their top line development. These are all the areas I'm thinking about. And of course, the way they move. And then symmetry and asymmetry. And so symmetry means when we're looking at a horse's entire body, is it equally balanced? Is there one shoulder higher than the other? Is the horse crooked? So if the horse isn't equally balanced through the body, if you're looking at the measurement of the horse. So if I had a camera, and we'll go ahead and do that in this video, the camera is going to get above Lovey and just take a look at her from above, and you'll see how she's equal. If you were to put a line straight down her top line and a line straight across her midsection, do all 4 parts, are they equally balanced? So is she over muscled or overdeveloped? Is she crooked? Those things are going to affect your horse's behavior. If they are asymmetrical, if they don't have symmetry, if it's asymmetry, that means that they're not balanced, and that's going to affect their behavior. It's going to affect saddle fitting. It's going to affect the way they move. It's going to definitely affect the way they are ridden, or the way you're able to ride them. So a lot of times we have tail swishing and ears pinning and horses getting tight and sucking back and being inverted in their body when we go to ride, all sorts of uncomfortable movement and postures in our horses, and they seem really irritable when we ride. And so much of that has to do with the physical aspects of the horse. So, you know, when you're going to look at a horse and you get on them to ride them, take a look, or get on a mounting block and take a look, which we're going to do with the camera, above your horse. You know, how does your horse look? That is so important to the way they're going to move under saddle and the way your saddle is going to fit them or not, as well as behavior. So for Lovey and Sundance, you know, I'm talking about them being in the category of a great pre-purchase exam. And horses like that, meaning they've got tons of potential, athleticism, excellent minds, excellent training. They're very versatile. You know, they've had a level of training, or they just have the temperament that allows them to be great on the trail, great in the arena, great in the round pen. You can lunge them, you can handle them. They're really an all-around, well-balanced mentally and physical horse. And you know, whether you want to show a horse like Lovey, who has tons of potential for upper level dressage movements and some decent hunter form. She's not the best jumper, but her dressage is off the chart. She could be worth a lot of money if I were to sell her. And Lovey's probably a good, strong level 2 dressage right now with my training. I would say Lovey, you know, could go anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 easily, depending on who I wanted to sell her to, if she was for sale. So if I wanted somebody, not an inventor, she's not an inventing horse. She just doesn't have the form. She has a stamina, but she doesn't have the form. Maybe she could become that, but I don't see it. It's not that easy for her. Some horses like Billy and Sundance actually, my little quarter horse that you guys are going to be looking at, would be a great jumper. She's a phenomenal jumper, not hunter, jumper. So for Lovey, she'd just be fantastic working in dressage. And so if I wanted somebody that wanted to take her up through 4th level or Grand Prix, believe it or not, Lovey would go for a lot more than $30,000. And yes, if whoever wanted to buy her, if she was for sale, they would definitely want to do a vet pre-purchase exam and have her x-ray just to make sure she hasn't had any prior fractures or you know, fine, what do you want to call it, hairline, you know, fractures or anything wrong with her that would prevent her from continuing and progressing in her training. So that's when I recommend when you're getting into that price range. But again, if someone came along and Lovey was for sale and they, to me, were the right person as far as, you know what, Caroline, I only want to pay $15,000, but this horse is going to be my personal horse for trail riding and some natural horsemanship and liberty, and we're going to continue learning our dressage, but I'm really not interested in showing, but I felt this person was perfect for Lovey, I would sell Lovey at $15,000, and that person would trust me as I have my reputation on the line, and more than likely they would not have a vet come out and do a pre-purchase exam because they would trust me. They would understand and know her training was with me the whole time, and I haven't broken her down or abused her training. So that's where it gets a little more complicated. It depends on what you want to use the horse for, and if you need to get x-rays.